The twin suns of the alien planet were setting when Daniel stepped into the village, their orange light falling over strange stone towers and glowing plants. The air smelled of smoke, spice, and something he could not name. He had only landed on this world 2 days ago, sent as a representative of the human colony nearby, but already the aliens had insisted he join something called the Ceremony of Fire. Daniel thought it was just a formal tradition, maybe like cutting a ribbon at a new building or shaking hands at a peace treaty. He smiled politely when the elders approached him, their tall frames covered in long robes made of scaled fabric. Their large eyes watched him with both curiosity and weight as if they were judging him. One elder spoke through the translator, his voice deep and rough. "Tonight you step into the circle. Once inside you cannot turn back." The words made Daniel pause, but he reminded himself this was probably only symbolic. He had read about alien rituals. Many were just shows of respect. So he nodded. "Of course," he said, trying to sound confident. The villagers gathered in the central square. A huge fire blazed in the middle, its flames bright blue instead of red. Strange powders had been thrown into it, and every time the sparks rose, shapes like birds or dragons seemed to appear inside the flames. Children sang, their voices high and sharp, while drums beat in a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. Daniel could feel the sound in his chest. An alien woman walked forward and held out a carved staff to him. "Enter," she said simply. The circle was drawn in white ash around the fire. Daniel took a breath and stepped across it. The crowd cheered and the drums grew louder. Inside the circle, the heat was strong, but Daniel forced himself to stand tall. He was asked to repeat phrases after the elder. The translator struggled, giving him clumsy words, but Daniel did his best. "I accept the bond of fire. I stand with the people. I join my life to—" He stopped for a second, confused by the last part. Join his life? That sounded serious. But the crowd waited, staring at him, and Daniel thought refusing might offend them. He sighed and repeated, "I join my life to yours." The elder's eyes gleamed as if satisfied. The people roared in approval. Sparks flew higher, painting the sky with burning light. Daniel felt sweat on his neck. Something about this was wrong. Why did the words feel heavier than just a formality? The fire changed suddenly, bursting upward in a column of light. From the smoke, a figure stepped forward. It was a young alien woman, her silver skin shining in the glow, her eyes bright as molten gold. She wore ceremonial clothes decorated with crystals and feathers, and on her forehead was a mark of the same white ash that drew the circle. The crowd went silent as she approached. Daniel blinked. She looked nervous, almost shy, but her steps were steady. She stopped beside him and lowered her head. The elder raised his arms. "The bond is complete," he announced. The night dragged on with music, dancing, and the alien people celebrating under the twin moons. Daniel stood stiffly, still bound to Lyra by the glowing cloth around his wrist. Every laugh, every cheer, every chant around him reminded him of one truth. These people truly believed he had taken their vow. They believed this strange union was real. Daniel's chest felt heavy. He had come to this planet as a guest, maybe even a bridge between humans and this alien race. Instead, with one mistake, he had been tied to a woman he had never met before tonight. Lyra stayed beside him, quiet but graceful, her golden eyes shining whenever she looked toward the fire. There was no smile on her face, but there was pride. She held her head high as if this bond gave her strength. When the music faded, the elder raised his staff again. His voice rolled over the crowd like a storm. "The vows have been spoken. The fire has chosen. Now the bride is revealed." Daniel froze. Bride? He thought the ceremony was already over. What more could there be? The villagers pulled back, leaving space in the center. A group of attendants stepped forward. They guided Lyra to stand before Daniel, then began to remove her ceremonial coverings one by one. Not her clothes, but the heavy decorations she wore, the feathered cape, the crystal ornaments, the ash markings. Piece by piece she was revealed not as a figure of ritual but as a real person. Daniel finally saw her clearly. Her silver skin glimmered softly under the moons. Without the feathers and ornaments, her form was slim but strong, built for movement. Her long hair, white as snow, flowed down her back, catching the firelight, and her golden eyes, though strange and alien, were filled with a quiet intensity that made Daniel's breath catch. For the first time he realized she was not some distant figure from a story. She was flesh and blood standing in front of him, tied to him by vows he never meant to speak. The elder spoke again. This is Lyra, daughter of the River Clan, chosen by fire to walk beside the human. From this night, her honor is his honor, her shame is his shame. They are bound. The crowd cheered, but Daniel's heart sank deeper. Lyra's honor. His honor. Her shame. His shame? What did that even mean? What if he made a mistake? What if he let her down? Lyra turned toward him, her expression calm but serious. She extended her hands, palms open, a gesture of offering. Daniel hesitated, but the crowd's eyes were sharp. He placed his hands on hers. The cloth around their wrists pulsed with light, then slowly dissolved into glowing dust that floated into the air. The bond no longer needed physical ties. It was already accepted by everyone here. Daniel forced a smile, but inside his mind was chaos. This can't be happening. This isn't real marriage. It can't be. But then he caught Lyra's gaze again. She was watching him, not with fear, but with something he couldn't name. Trust maybe, or duty? It unsettled him. The celebration ended with chants and final blessings. As the villagers began to drift away, the elder approached them once more. Now begins the first night, he said gravely. You will share shelter. Speak your truths. The bond is not only of fire, but of heart. Daniel felt his stomach twist. Share shelter? Did that mean? Before he could ask, attendants led them away from the square down a path lined with glowing stones. At the end stood a small hut. Daniel met her eyes. Something in her gaze was challenging, almost daring him, and for the first time that night, instead of fear, he felt a flicker of determination. Then teach me, he said quietly. Lyra studied him for a long moment before nodding once. Tomorrow will be the first lesson. They sat together in silence, the fire's glow washing over them both. Outside, the village still celebrated. But inside that hut, under the weight of vows neither of them had chosen, a new understanding had begun to form. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Daniel lay awake long after Lyra closed her eyes. Questions swirled in his mind. Could he really pass these trials? Could he live up to the vows he never meant to speak? And most of all, could he learn to trust the alien woman who now shared his fate? The answers would come with the dawn. The sun rose early on the alien world, casting golden light across the crystal towers and glowing rivers. Daniel woke to the sound of drums echoing through the village. His eyes felt heavy. He had barely slept, but there was no time to rest. Today was the day of the trials. He sat up and found Lyra already awake. She was fastening leather-like armor across her shoulders, her white hair braided tightly. Her golden eyes were calm, but Daniel sensed a tension beneath them. She glanced at him. The tests begin at sunrise. We must go. Daniel rubbed his face. You keep saying tests, but you never told me exactly what they are. Lyra studied him for a moment. If I told you, it would not be a test. You must face them with your own strength. He frowned, but there was no time to argue. They stepped out of the hut together, greeted by villagers lining the path. The people's eyes followed Daniel, some filled with hope, others with doubt. Whispers moved through the crowd. The human must prove himself. If he fails, the bond fails. If he fails, war begins. Daniel's stomach twisted. Every step felt heavier. He hadn't asked for this, but now the entire village's future rested on him. At the center square, the elder stood tall, staff glowing faintly in the morning sun. The fire has chosen, he declared, but words alone cannot bind. Today the human will prove if he is worthy. The first trial began in the jungle beyond the village. A wide crowd followed to watch. The elder pointed toward the dense forest. Retrieve the heart flower. Only one blooms in the shadow grove. Without it, no union stands. Daniel glanced at Lyra. She gave him a steady nod. I will guide you only to the edge. Beyond that, it is your path. The forest was alive with sounds, strange birds screeching, creatures moving in the shadows. The air was damp and thick, and vines hung like traps from the trees. Daniel pushed forward, every sense alert. He had no weapon, only his hands and his wits. Deeper inside, the light dimmed. The trees grew twisted, their bark glowing faintly like veins of fire. Daniel moved carefully, watching each step. Then he heard it, a low growl. From the shadows, a beast emerged. Its body was long and scaled, its forelegs thick with muscle. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of sharp teeth. Lyra, he shouted. We need to get above it. She followed his gaze, understanding at once. The tower. Together they sprinted toward the half-broken crystal tower the beast had smashed. The predator noticed and lunged, but Daniel and Lyra scrambled up the leaning structure, climbing side by side. The ground shook as claws struck below, nearly toppling the tower, but they kept climbing. At the top, wind whipped around them. Daniel's chest burned, but he forced himself to stand. The beast roared below, lifting its head toward them. Its throat glowed faintly where the weak spot pulsed. Lyra drew her crystal blade, gripping it tightly. "I will strike." Daniel shook his head. "It'll kill you before you get close." She met his eyes, golden and fierce. "Then we strike together." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Daniel saw the determination in her. The courage, the willingness to risk her life not just for herself but for him and her people. Something shifted inside him. This bond was no accident. She was no stranger. She was his partner now. The beast roared again, opening its throat wide. Daniel and Lyra leapt from the tower together. The world blurred. Wind screamed past his ears. He felt her hand brush his as they fell side by side. At the last second, Daniel grabbed a vine hanging from the ruins. It slowed his fall just enough for him to swing toward the beast. Lyra, blade in hand, landed on its neck, sliding down with force. Daniel shouted, driving the burning torch he carried against the beast's throat, while Lyra plunged her blade into the glowing weak spot. The monster howled, thrashing wildly. Fire and crystal sank deep, and with a final roar, the predator collapsed, shaking the ground. Dust rose. Silence followed. Daniel rolled onto the ground, coughing, his body aching. Beside him, Lyra pulled her blade free, breathing hard but alive. The villagers slowly emerged, eyes wide with awe. The elder stepped forward, his voice ringing with power. The fire brought trial before trial. And together they stood. Their bond is forged not only in vow, but in blood and courage. The villagers cheered, louder than ever. Daniel sat up, chest heaving, and looked at Lyra. She was covered in dust, hair tangled, but her golden eyes glowed brighter than the fire. For the first time she smiled, truly smiled at him. "You are reckless," she said softly, "but you are mine." Daniel laughed weakly, though his heart pounded with something deeper than fear. "And you're terrifying. But I guess you're mine too." The cheer of the village roared around them. Daniel realized that something had changed tonight. This wasn't just survival. This wasn't just ritual. Somewhere between the fire, the vows, and the danger, a bond had been born. Real, alive, and unbreakable. And tomorrow, the final trial would not just test him. It would test them both. The morning after the battle with the night predator, the village was different. Where there had been fear, there was now celebration. Villagers rebuilt smashed huts, children carried glowing flowers, and warriors painted marks of victory on the stones. But the center of it all was Daniel and Lyra. Everywhere he walked, eyes followed him, not with suspicion, but with respect. Whispers ran through the crowd. The human stood with her. The bond is strong. The fire did not choose wrongly. Daniel felt the weight of their stares. He had never wanted this bond, yet